What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you an early preview for Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, which is launching in just a couple of days from the time of this video on July 9th, and that is obviously possible because I was given access to it via Ubisoft. However, a couple more things I need to explain here. This is not the review embargo. There are in fact two different embargoes for this game at the moment. The one that is lifting when this video goes live is basically a preview embargo. You're allowed to talk about the game up to a point, but you gotta save your final review scores and all that for the review embargo, which is in 2 more days on July 8th. So you can expect a review either then, or I may push it a day to July 9th because that will actually work for my schedule a little better. But around then you will get the proper review. Now, with that stuff out of the way, what this video is going to be about is basically just going over some gameplay that you'll obviously be able to see that will be new, and then of course some of the mechanical things, a fair bit of which is actually new. And then finally, before we get into the ins and outs there, I jumped back into Assassin's Creed after having not played it since the second one with Assassin's Creed Shadows, which I honestly didn't really love. As a result, I made a commitment to going back and playing some old ones. I've played Mirage since then. And then at that point, with the Black Flag remake here being announced shortly after, it simply made sense to jump into this one next, which is what we are doing here. However, that does of course mean that this is my first experience with this game. I have not played it previously, and some of the intricacies about what the original was compared to, of course, this version are going to be lost on me. So if that's the specific stuff you're wanting to hear, I'm probably just not the guy for you. But otherwise, let's dive into this and talk about it. If you're completely unaware, like I was, Black Flag tells the story of Edward Kenway, a privateer during the golden age of piracy. Think Blackbeard and all that. And it's a story about him reconciling his lust for gold, want of a better life, and the freedom that comes with it, in all of these situations that ultimately gets him caught up in. And luckily for Edward Kenway, he's a pretty capable guy, and even more so in this remake, which is probably the appropriate place to mention some of the changes they've made to combat. Now, this is not one of their more RPG-centric entries, rather, the combat here is much more on the action-adventure side of things, and there is, of course, stealth involved as well. Now, the action side of the combat is really down to a system in which you need to tear down enemies' defenses and ideally parry a lot of their attacks. Parrying is very easy here, but if you can time it properly, you instantly destroy their defenses, which is of course useful for you. Otherwise, you can spam attack them, and of course try to, avoid their attacks as they come in, but you can break their defense by attacking them normally, which then leads to a takedown. But if you can perfectly parry an enemy when they go to attack you, you can then use your hidden blade takedowns, which allows you to take down that enemy instantly, yes, but also then allows you to chain those takedowns based on the maximum number allowed due to your equipable items. You can quickly destroy a bunch of enemies. The catch to this being there are some enemy types that prevent those chains from happening, and then you'll have to mix in things like your pistol shots to break their defenses, and overall it's a pretty decent system for an action-adventure style of game. I think it fits well enough, and then of course the other side of that is stealth. Now, stealth is interesting here because one of the changes they've made to the remade version here is you are actually able to crouch anywhere. This means stealth is a more useful tool generally, but I will also say it doesn't seem to really be required either from everything I've experienced thus far, with them even having announced already that they've made changes to mini missions where failing the stealth would fail the mission and force you to restart. Here it just continues on and you simply have to fight instead. In most cases, it would seem. Nonetheless, stealth is even more available than it was, and this will of course lead to your typical stealth gameplay, assassinations, that kind of thing, your drop attacks, hiding bodies, etc. Now, of course, to go along with that, you still have some other tools outside of your hidden blades, such as rope darts, smoke bombs, etc., so you don't necessarily have to go all in on the pure action side of things. And then there's also the return of the more socially oriented stealth, that is to say hiring NPCs, in this case dancers or pirates, to cause distractions or allow you to blend in with them as you pass by a gate or whatever, including a whole bunch of places to hide and parkour around. Speaking of parkour, some of the changes they made here were interesting. They've included the option of some of the finer tuned adjustments that have been available in later titles, like for instance controlling exactly how the side ejects work or giving you greater control over exactly where you are going to jump when you are parkouring, but those are menu options, so you can mess around with them and toggle what feels good for you, which is probably the right way to go. And then they actually added zip lines. It is my understanding that the zip lines are new, but there are in fact zip lines now. But of course, this game only partially takes place on solid ground because, as the name would suggest, and the fact that it takes place in the golden age of piracy means we are at sea for a good bit of it. And they have changed the way some of the naval aspects work as well, starting probably most notably with the 3 new officers. I'm not going to go over all of them, but they've already announced the Padre, Lucy Baldwin, and Tobias Smith. So as you collect these guys, they will basically give you an ability on the Jackdaw, your ship, which is going to make it more useful in combat. Some of those are dramatic in their effect and make you substantially stronger. Each of those guys also has a story associated with them if you want to get to the bottom of like who they are as a person. There's even a good bit of characterization there. And yet, that's not the only thing, so you can also, of course, upgrade the ship itself, using it to capture other ships, which leads to a whole bunch of other systems. And if that still wasn't enough for you, they are returning with the fleet option. My understanding is this was in the original game, but you are able to capture ships and add them to your fleet, which you can then send on piracy missions throughout the sort of sections of the world map, which can give you a whole bunch of rewards for your hideout. The hideout is returning and upgrading. This is essentially your player hub that you will build up, letting you enhance shops, give you places to buy better upgrades for the Jackdaw, leading to a whole bunch of quests and exploration. There's an upgrade that increases the effectiveness of hunting sea animals, which makes getting the upgrades to some of your like basic inventory stuff easier. There's this big art collection you can get in there and mess around with and customize some things, so a fair bit going on. On top of all of that, there are a bunch of new missions and story content that have already been announced. I'm obviously not going to go into those for spoiler reasons, but even if you've played the game before, it does look like there will be new content added beyond the original game. Now, a couple of other things I noticed from my time with the preview is that there are a whole bunch of unmarked locations and islands you can explore and get to the bottom of, which will usually lead you to interesting sights to see, lore, etc. So while the game itself does take place across like a whole bunch of points of interest, and Ubisoft is kind of known for that like tower-oriented open world formula, it does look like they added a whole bunch of like islands and extra bits of exploration. To add on to that, you're also able to dive underwater pretty much anywhere, and that is separate from the diving for shipwrecks, which I believe were in the original, but now you can just like swim underwater in plenty of places on top of that. So there's all of that for you. Now, I am looking forward to getting into the nitty-gritty of all of that in the review here in a few days, but I thought some people might appreciate the look at some of these and just kind of an explanation of what's even changing here to begin with, alongside of course, just being able to see some fresh gameplay via this embargo lift. I am, for the most part, going to keep opinions to myself until that review for a couple of more days, but as I mentioned, the review embargo specifically lifts on July 8th. I believe it's pretty early in the morning, actually, but if I don't have the review up on the 8th, it should be up on the 9th. That's just a scheduling thing on my end. And so all I will say for the time being is that while I personally have no experience with the original, from everything I have seen thus far, it does look like they have added on to this game substantially, and I am looking forward to getting very in-depth with it here in a couple of days. But as for today, that is pretty much going to do it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, hang around for the review. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.